Thank you again so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here today discussing such an important topic. My name is Adriana Machado. I'm the founder of Briyah, and I'll pass the floor to Flavia Pesego so she can talk about the 55 projects. Flavia is one of the co-founders of the 55 projects. So Flavia, please, thank you for this partnership, and the floor is yours.
Thank you all for coming, for attending this talk. This is the third talk of this series in partnership with the Briyah Institute. This idea born after we opened the exhibition Forest, Ancestry and Dystopia, which brings 16 Brazilian artists to a collective show in Miami at the Fundación Pablo Tugari. And these artists, through their research and photographies, they are telling us about the Amazon, about the indigenous communities, about mining, and of course the good and issues about the Amazon. So after that, we had this series of talks with Adriana, and we brought health and healing, architecture and resilience, and now we have this waste and technology. So thank you, Adriana, for the collaboration. Hope you'll have a great conversation again.
Yes, I'm sure it will be. So with the amazing guests we have here today, Flavia, in this initiative is amazing too. So I'm sure. Thank you so much for the partnership. It's great to be the ambassador, one of the ambassadors of the 55 Project and the founder of Briyah, so connecting the two in a very systemic way. So we are going to talk about nature, and nature's magnificence reveals itself everywhere. Despite having been captured in art and informed science throughout the existence of mankind, there's still so much we can learn from nature that nature can inspire us to do. So nature connects art and science, from the ability to look and see, to all of the possibilities that we can have in terms of innovation and regeneration. So the series of dialogue in partnership with the 55 Project and bringing renowned artists like the ones you're going to see in this episode and the other ones, and distinguished experts in specific areas, just like Flavia mentioned, in health, architecture, technology. This is a way for us to also present to you a systemic view of the issues we're facing these days in the 21st century. And today we are going to focus about a very important issue. So the focus is on waste and technology. So virtually every individual, organization, and human activity generates some kind of waste. So it can be solid waste, hazardous waste, industrial, agricultural, mining, you name it. And unfortunately, the amount we produce, the amount of waste we produce, is influenced by our habits and industrial processes. And it's projected to nearly double by 2050. So it's also estimated, unfortunately, that 81% of all the waste generated in the planet becomes some kind of pollution, either buried in the lands, dumped into the water bodies, burned into the atmosphere. So it's a big issue. And technology is advancing fast, so it may help us transition to a more circular economy, tracking waste materials, managing waste responsibility, and also introducing ways to offset this waste. So we are very hopeful about that. But we need to expand the participation of actors that are needed to share the burden of funding all of this innovation that's needed and all of this high performance recycling that we wish we already had. So what do artists and technologists working in this field see in terms of the future? What is the role, for instance, of blockchain and tokenization and crypto in this play? So how does nature connect art and science in this space? So to answer these and other questions that our audience will have for us, we have the pleasure of having two fantastic guests with us. So Julia Pontes, thank you for being with us. let me introduce Julia here. So Julia is a photographer, visual artist, a mining researcher. Her work focuses mainly on extractivism and mining explorations in Brazil. Her mining visual survey has been recognized by the National Geographic Society, Harvard University's Planetary Health Alliance, Visura, and NYFA. It has been published in several international media outlets, and it has been exhibited in the US, Brazil, Spain, Argentina, France, Germany, and Guatemala. Julia holds a specialization in law and economics from UTDT in Argentina, a certificate in photography from the International Center of Photography, ICP, in New York, and an MFA in visual arts from Columbia University. So thank you so much, Julia, for being with us. I think we can't hear you, so you have to unmute yourself. There you go. Okay, awesome. And we also have Ian McKee, is the founder of and CEO of Solidus. Ian has a degree in economics in the US and started his career on Wall Street at Goldman Sachs until he decided to become an entrepreneur. So we have that in common too. He has already led an international consulting company, launched 2 startups, and now with Solidus, he has taken on this mission of ending waste in the world. Huge mission, Ian, and I applaud you for that. Ian believes in the desire and responsibility of every human being to recycle their waste correctly, and in the power of positive impact generated by technology applied to a shared, transparent, and digitized economy. So welcome, Ian. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. Can't wait.
All right. So before we start listening to them, and we have amazing questions also to ask them, we want to ask our audience and take the temperature and see how you feel about what we're going to be discussing here. So let me put a poll and you go and click on the answer that best suits you. So the first question is, let's see if we can see here on the screen. Do you consider yourself or aspire to be an artist, a scientist, or both? Can you see this polls? I can't see it, Isa. All right, so let's try again. Yes, now we have it. So do you consider yourself or aspire to be an artist, a scientist, or both? Please click on the answer and we will have the results to share with you soon. So we have 1 more minute and then we'll go. Okay, these are the results. Artist, 50%. Scientist, 25%, and both, 25%. So that's a very good crowd here. And we have 1 more question for you. So let's see. Do you see yourself as independent from nature, in alignment with nature, or as part of nature? So please click on the answers and we will share with you the results soon. So please pick one. And let's see the results. Oh, everybody 100% as part of nature. Beautiful crowd. I love it. Thank you for answering our quick poll. And let's get going. We have amazing questions here for this guest. So I will start by asking them how nature inspired them in their early days. So can you, I'll start with Ian first. Let's see, Ian, can you tell us, can you share how nature has shaped the way you are today, but how did it start? How was the connection there when you were growing up?
That's a really good question. And I think that I was really fortunate. I mean, I was born and raised in São Paulo in Brazil, and I spent a lot of my childhood at a very young age growing up and spending a lot of time on a beach, on a tropical-ish beach in Ubatuba. At the time, there was only 1 house on the beach and there was no electricity. And so I had a lot of contact with nature, and pristine nature, the kind it's very hard to find nowadays. I later became a diver and a sailor. So I've had the great privilege of seeing the underwater world, and to gain a sense of connection through sailing, of having nature. It's the power of nature to be able to propel and to transport me to places that I wanted to go, or even in competitions. So that's where everything started for me.
Yeah, so sailing is kind of in your genes a little bit too, right? With the family, with all the ancestrality too, right?
The old Vikings. Yep, I got a lot of Swedish blood in me. So, yep.
Good. Thank you so much, Ian. So let's ask Julia. Julia, how about you? How has nature inspired you in your early days?
Well, so can I show an image, because I'm so better with images than I'll ever be with words. So let me show this image so everyone can see it.
Yep.
So I'm originally from Belo Horizonte, which translates to beautiful horizon, right? And this is a shot of my city. And basically, actually, I have two of them, like one to explain what happens there. And this is our most important hill that it covers. It's called Serra do Curral. It's something that you can almost see it from everywhere you are in the city. And what happens is that mining usually whenever a mining agreement happens, they preserve the visible face of the mountain, and you can see that very clearly here. One side is super green, and the other side you have a pit. So basically, it is this. I grew up there. I grew up 2 blocks from a mine. I grew up in a place where mining was kind of part of it. So it is interesting because we are very related to the mountains, but at the same time, it is in a way that is also like, I have these memories, the childhood memories of sliding down in pits of iron ore. Like, this is so weird, right? Because it is kind of this memory where nature for me was already fragmented in my memory. It was already out and carved out. So basically, I've been hiking there and doing all those kinds of things. We have like so many waterfalls around the city. You drive like 20 minutes and you have a waterfall. It's something that you probably would have here, like in Atlanta or a reality in the US. So that's how nature is for me. It's embedded. The mountains are really embedded in my system because of how the city is shaped around mountains where I come from.
Wonderful. And I am sure this has a lot to do with the work you're doing now. So my second question, we'll start with you, Julia. So how has the work you're currently focused on have any inspiration? So has nature inspired this work you're doing? So tell us more about what it is that you're doing.
Well, basically,
before Julia starts, I'd like to say that I just spoke with Adriana before we started that Julia participated of the first collective show of the 55 Project. So we started the project as soon as we opened the collective show, Land Bodyscape, and of course that she was part of this show. And we are so happy to see you again after all these years.
And it's been 5 years, is it?
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So nice to see you. I will leave you with Adriana. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Flavia. So Julia, back to you. So how about the work you're doing now? Tell us all about it.
So I'm not even sure if it's now, right? It's already a almost 8-year research. And it's basically what I do. It departed from the fact that, and it's interesting enough because I've moved out of Belo when I was 21 and I always relied on airplanes to go back. So I've never been completely based there since then. And it's always like 3 months, 6 months, but not entirely there. And so what happened is that the distance between going back and forth allowed me to see the difference in the landscape. And for probably 10 years ago, I started questioning, like, my homeland is turning itself into a Swiss cheese. What's going on? Why are we not talking about it? Why are we not talking about these huge dams that are there? Whenever I fly, I see them. Why are you not talking about the amount of pits that are around the airport? And so it started like that investigation of why this is becoming such a huge part of our everyday life and our landscape, but we are not talking about it. So I decided that I wanted to document via aerial images what I was seeing from above. Like I had a very privileged bird eye view whenever I was flying in. And basically when I started doing that, I realized that the problem was much bigger, especially because, you know, I couldn't fly around. There were a lot of surveil areas, like in the sky, you have routes that you can follow whenever you're flying. So it's not that you can fly everywhere. So we had to turn, like I needed a partner that was willing to take the risk of turning off the transponder and just flying wherever I needed those images to be taken. And that was when I realized that it was much worse than I could have ever have envisioned. Like the amount of destruction that was caused by this huge waste dams, by the waste mountains, and by the mining corporations. We were like, I mean, this area where I come from, we are more than 4 million people, and probably if we expand the geographic area, we'll be around like 5 or 6 million people, and it's one of the largest open pit mines concentrations in the world. So basically you drive and it's just a continuation of mines one after the other. And after doing that several times, the aerial, I've started flying in 2015, and I keep doing that. And I realized that there might be people suffering from it. So basically what I do, I combine research, academic research, investigation, and scientific investigation with also a visual documentation and audio documentation of what's happening where I come from. But I extend my practice and my research to other places in Latin America, but mostly I'm focused in Brazilian extractivism. And I'm not sure if I should share some photos.
Yeah, please do. I just want to comment that you are yourself the connection between art and science. The work you're doing is that representation, because you not only have the artistic way of looking at it, but you're questioning it and you're going after answers in science, trying to come up with more understanding for also to inform your art. So it is the connection of both art and science right there. So yes, please share some images. I think, as you said, images will speak more than words and people will understand better. Please.
So when we were talking about waste, I'm showing this, and I might not go, and I'll go back and forth while Ian is talking. But so basically what struck me the most is how waste can be beautiful, right? And and it also reflects my own relationship, because we are also part as human beings, part of this destruction, right? We drive cars, we are using computers to connect ourselves right now. We all rely on some sort of transportation. So we are always generating, as you said very well, we are always generating waste. And by purchasing a new car and creating the waste of that car that you had before, but also by the car itself and the industry and all the chain, right? It starts here and it goes all throughout the chain, and Ian will be able to better articulate that than I am. But like throughout the chain, you're generating waste. So I'm focusing basically on the primary source of waste, which is when the land is when something comes and really extract that from the ground. And so that relationship, that bittersweet relationship of us having all the comforts of our everyday lives, having the possibility of having an AC right now, also comes at this cost, right? That same relationship of us knowing how bad it is and at the same time still consuming, is the same thing that happens with the waste in the mining dams. So basically, they're absolutely stunning. They're beautiful, but they're also a reflection of something that is extremely harmful. In this dam, for instance, that is at risk, and it becomes harder with climate change because the level of rains in this area has exponentially grown in the past decades, right? So the exploration came with that. And mining corporations blame on climate change that now they have all these huge waste dams at risk, but it is not as so, because they also prepared for something called 1,000-year rain, which scientists will really understand. Like whenever you build a structure, they are building structures that should be capable of of holding a 1,000-year rain. So in this case, this dam, the first house is 150 meters, which is what, like I can't like make the math, but like 40 something feet, 50 like distance from the nearest house. It is very close. It is extremely close. It's the distance of a 5-story building. It's the distance between the nearest house and this dam that is at risk. So basically, same thing. This is slate. Slate is used in all our roofing of most of American houses, and also flooring. And the right side, you will see the wastewater, and to the left, you see the natural water before it gets mixed with the waste of the.
So this is not a drawing. This is a real place. You took a photograph.
Oh yeah. This one is in Congonhas, which is also a World Heritage Site.
It looks like an abstract painting here.
I know. Yeah, no,
right?
no. Those are always. This one is a slate one. In Brazil, we have the world largest production of slate, and this is also another aerial image of the waste that was. This is from a tailings, which equals waste dam that collapsed in 2015 and generated Brazil's largest environmental disaster in its history. And so this
what was this one? This was Brumadinho?
This is Samarco. This is Mariana.
Mariana, the first.
Yes.
Brumadinho was after.
This is a toxic mud that traveled 450 miles. So I'm already 450 miles away from where it collapsed. And that's like the water mixed with the waste, and the waste is basically earth-based, right? So that's why you get those tones.
Wow, it does look like an abstract painting, but it is real life. It is what
it
happened.
is all real life, and that's what I'm saying. That at least for me, my images always go together with a lot of fact-based information. So geolocation, you always have the geolocation where the image is at, so you can go there and you scan a QR code and you open your GPS and you see where it is, but also with all the information that was collected by local researchers or scientists to back what's going on here, to create that same friction of what I'm seeing and the reality, right? This beauty, and at the same time knowing how hard the reality that generated this beauty is. I'll let Ian talk a little bit, because a lot of the images that I'm going after this are images that are related to what he has to say. So I'll just stop here and let Ian speak, and then I'll show more later on.
Thank you, Julia, so much. So Ian, for you, so how is nature inspiring the work you're doing now? So tell us about what it is, the newest project, and why are you so excited about it?
Great, thank you. And first things first, Julia, incredible pictures. I mean, you shock, and also at the same time are able to find a way to present it in a beautiful form. I mean, obviously, we can look at waste in its horror. And I think you did your art is really impressive. So I haven't ever seen anything like it. So. And from the extracted, going to sort of like the way I interpret waste in general, is essentially that we are nature, and we are part of nature, and there's no denying it. And we are limited by our biocapacity on this planet, and we have become completely disconnected from it, in a manner where typically. The balance in nature is established through natural systems only, and we've been able to flourish on this planet much to our ability to be able to extract and generate value from materials, and unfortunately we've come to a place where the natural resources have been either so abundant, or our ability to increase the productivity and the extraction of materials has grown in a way where we can continue to do the things that Julia is demonstrating, where we continue to extract and extract and extract and extract to the point where we're not going to be able to sustain life on Earth anymore. And it's quite worrisome. And if you also look at how commodity prices and extraction is going, this is going to be a fundamental economic problem that we're going to face, because once supply drops and the cost and the price of commodities begin to explode, people are going to starve. People aren't going to be able to buy anymore the products that they love to keep buying, many times unnecessarily. So whether it's your cars or your vehicles, or your electronics or other things that you just have and we take for granted today, those things aren't going to be available unless we start to change our habits significantly. And more than changing our habits, it's really about closing the loop on many of the things that we can do in the short term. So a lot of people that are in the environmental space, they will say, we're done. It's over. Like, there's just no chance, whether it's through population growth or just our inability to sustain life. There's just no chance that we can survive. And I think that there are arguments to be made on that side. But I really just prefer not to think that way. And I've been working in the area of sustainability for more than 15 years, and I've been able and part of projects that bring exponential returns on environment. So whether it's through better building efficiency, passive strategies, whether it's closing the loop on waste. I mean, a zero waste certification, just to give you an example, sets a minimum certification level as a requirement, 90% recycling rates. And recycling 90% of your business operation. I'm not talking about extractive industries. I mean, extractive industries are just out of date, right? I mean, the idea essentially is to be able to be far more efficient, so we don't need extractive industries, although we'll likely need them for a very long time. But once you start to look and understand the circular economy and the waste streams and the level of inefficiencies that we have, there are many low-hanging fruits. And we can attack this problem collectively, and we can talk about the new technologies, Web3 technologies that are going to be coming that are going to enable this. But essentially, we need to start addressing the problem, focusing on the things that we can change and move the needle really quickly. And then after that, and once we do that, then we can really talk about high performance. Waste is nothing less than just a measure of inefficiency. And once you start seeing it through that lens, we can be way more efficient. And that's my focus.
But tell us a little bit about the project itself. So how are you going to bring this possibility for us to have zero waste, or your mission in the planet? How do you envision getting there?
Right. So everybody understands technology in terms of the technology that we know of today. And the technologies that we know of today are super powerful, but they're nothing close to what we're starting to develop now. And so blockchain is a new technology that enables a lot of different things to happen. But fundamentally, it's a manner in which you can create a database or a history of a database that is immutable. And once you do that, you're essentially guaranteeing that something that is recorded can't be changed in the future, or that all changes are recorded on chain, and that this database is a distributed public ledger, meaning it's a technology where it's not housed behind some corporation or behind some government institution. And so when we talk about nature and we talk about waste and we talk about responsibility, imagine a world where you have a database that is permissionless, and that no single attacker can come in and change that database. It's basically becomes a public commons where you can, all of a sudden, everybody has to be responsible, or everybody knows that somebody was irresponsible. And what that does is enable us through these new technologies, including tokenizations and smart contracts. We can go into details of all that stuff, but through these new technologies, which become business models, new business models on top of this public ledger, the sky is literally the limit. And the future organizations, and this is what we're building, is is publicly owned. What Web3 is different from the traditional internet is that it is a new internet or a new technology that you can write to and read, but you can also own. So the future companies, if you think of Facebooks and if you think of Googles and you think of the major corporations in the world, these companies, the future companies, are going to scale so much faster. They're going to be built so much more quickly. And these companies that we know are going to be replaced really quickly. And the reason for that is because the power of the community, what's called a decentralized autonomous organization. So the future currencies, today we own currencies like the dollar and the real and other currencies. And these are government basically run currencies. Now we're going to have our own currencies to run these and manage these ecosystems. So how do we then do this, right? So if the problem of the environment is being managed by governments today, so through whether it's carbon disclosure, whether it's waste and extended producer responsibilities, these are run by government regulators. Waste management as solutions are being managed and decided upon by local municipalities that don't have the technology, don't have the financial resources, don't have the know-how on how to solve these problems. And so the blockchain and the public ledger and the technologies built on top of them are going to remove the responsibility, the big weight of the responsibility of these municipalities and governments, and is going to distribute that responsibility across multiple stakeholders. So whether it's a company, whether it's your home, your household, you, your friends, a club, a shopping mall, a bar and restaurant, a residential complex, the industry, all these different players are now going to be able to transact and interact with these inefficiencies, these waste products that are going to be created, whether it's carbon or physical waste or liquid waste, and you're going to be able to track responsibility on all of this. And so our technology today, as it stands, we do waste codification and chain of custody recording on blockchain. So we identify a single unit of waste wherever it's created in the world. We can track waste custody, ensuring that every single waste transaction is recorded on a blockchain, and any waste IDs that are modified are recorded and immutable forever. So we can ensure that the circular economy gets tracked all the way to the source of where waste gets created, which is the key to changing and making waste efficiency far more efficient. Because once you can sort waste at the source, you can then ensure that sorting gets recycled to the right place. And through Web3 technology or blockchain tokenization, once that waste ID gets certifiably recycled, we can return value through tokens and crypto back to each individual user that contributed to that environmental service of not polluting. So that's how we see and like to solve this problem.
So what I'm hearing is there is hope. And then the technology that we already have available in the world today, that the ones you mentioned, are bringing more transparency, are decentralizing, are enabling people to take this problem in their own hands and participate and engage and not depend only on governments and other institutions that in the past have had the privilege or the burden itself alone. But also I see that there are gaps still. I mean, although it seems so easy, the way you described seemed at least very easy to me that this will all be solved. I see in Julia's work still a big gap that technology might help us with, because recycling is not all perfect yet, right? We still don't know. We don't share certain information that I think through Julia's work we are able to see. So let me go back to Julia here. So Julia, all of this pollution that we talked about, all of this, waste that is there and people don't talk about, like you said, what can technology do to help? And what needs to be done in your opinion?
Yeah. So one thing that I think it's key is the fact that maybe data can push companies to actually invest more in research and development, right? R&D right now has a huge challenge, which is how to upcycle things without creating even more harm or losing quality. So right now, whenever you have this, whenever you're disposing your recycling at your home, it's a lot of people feel at ease, like, oh my God, I'm recycling. Or in Brazil, when you see the numbers, like Brazil recycles 98% of it is aluminum at what cost, right? And that's why I wanted to share this, which I believe it's, can you see it?
Yeah.
So this is something called red mud. Red mud
Not another
is
abstract painting. No, it's reality.
it's a reality. And red mud is a problem, and it's a problem in many countries. Like it's a very big problem in India too, where the aluminum production is also high. So basically, and I think this image is very symbolic because you see the trees there, so trying to survive, obviously not surviving, and also this very organic kind of image that the dam made. And it's basically extremely toxic. And so the problem with scrap from aluminum and also the waste that is generated even in the recycling process is something we really need to address, and Ian said when we had a previous conversation, right, like, is it glass the solution? But then we are super inefficient, we need way more energy. And so I believe that whenever we're talking about waste management, it is important to understand that it's not enough for us to look at anything and kick the solution for, like, we have to address it in 8-10 years. We really have to think about it. How are we going to have a radically changed reality where our kind of consumption, or currently we as consumers, we are also pushing for the companies to actually demanding them to address those issues, right? And so the more also we as people, as investors, right, people that are investing in those companies, it's so easy to use or to hide behind ESG. So how are we really dealing with it? And this is something also that I wanted to bring. There is something that it's called teor de corte in Portuguese, like my crude translation, and I don't have a very wide geological vocabulary in English, but it's called like the cut level. So the cut level in this area of my home state, this is of gold, is 0.05%. So basically, for every ton of earth that is removed, so every ton of a mountain that is excavated, you get 0.5 grams of gold. And that is not, so that 0.5 grams of gold, you are not even able to produce one single laptop. You are able to produce 17 cell phones roughly, but not even one single laptop. So for each time we are buying, something like this can be, we are buying a new laptop, we might be removing a ton of earth, so that's the amount of waste we are generating.
And people don't talk about it, right? You just, okay, the cell phone is here, the laptop is here, let's just get to the store.
and if you look closely at the waste management of how companies like Apple, Dell, and Microsoft, how those companies are dealing with their waste, they're doing a very, very poor job. Dell is the one that is addressing a little bit more, trying to really upcycle kind of and actually reuse the materials that were previously used in their computers. But whenever you look at Apple, what are incentives you have? Like, you go to Apple, they pay nothing for your used item. Like, if you go to the secondary market, you can sell it for more than that. And so you have no incentives whatsoever to trade in your computer for that. So it's really hard to see companies that are really, really responsible for the whole chain, right? For also to making their products go back and making sure that everything goes back. It's the same thing with our dishwashers, our washing machines. Everything has a lifespan that is so short. And what do we do and how do we dispose? I live in a city in New York where anyone who has ever been here, it might be surprised, right? Like, it's awful. It's awful. You dispose of everything by your curb. So how are we dealing with that? How are companies when companies are ever going to be held accountable for the waste they're responsible to generate, because they're the ones selling those fridges, right? They're super contaminated, and you shouldn't be throwing a fridge in your curb, right? So that's a question that I really leave, that I think it's still, this is the gold mine in Minas Gerais. There's one that has so you can see a truck like this is almost the size of 150 square feet, it's not square feet, square meters apartment, like a 1,500 square feet apartment.
It's like the off-road trucks.
Yeah, exactly. So how are this ginormous place is so extended, it's so much bigger than the city is. So how are we addressing those things? And I will leave that to Ian, because he,
But there's an interesting data before Ian goes. There's an interesting data from the United Nations. There's a e-waste monitor. I think they released the last one in 2020, and they said that in 5 years, e-waste grew 21%, and it's expected to double by 2030. So we are definitely consuming more technology, and we are definitely creating or generating more e-waste. And what we don't talk about, and your painting, your photograph looks like painting, your photographs describe this beautifully, is these products are made of gold, of silver, copper, platinum, many other materials, minerals, right? And this means if we're demanding more of that technology, and there's no going back here, we are demanding more mining, and we are demanding more of that, which your photographs are showing us, right? So, what are the lessons here? I talked about biomimicry in the other episode of this talk here, and biomimicry means learning from nature, and maybe replacing some of the materials could be a way. But let me stop here and ask Ian. Ian, you're going to say something, and I interrupted you, so please go ahead.
I was going to essentially, hopefully, be able to share that if we think of things in a systemic basis, and we think of nature as these energy transfer systems, we are going to have to create a multi-network, we're going to need a lot of research and development. We need systemic approaches. So Apple, for example, it touts its recycling program, and it only recycles 20% of its iPhone products. There are going to be new business models that are going to have to be created that are going to include, business models like product as a service, that include recycling already in the product. Where that company becomes responsible for recycling the waste that it created. New service providers are going to have to come in that are going to have to be offering these companies mechanisms or facilitate these companies to be able to break down their products. 3D printing is going to be critical because you need to be able to 3D print your products without having to transport even recycled materials all over the world. I remember when I was going through the True Zero Waste course back 5 years ago or more, essentially 77% of the packaging waste happens even before it actually reaches the end consumer. I mean, think of all of the packaging that is required to build an iPhone, for example, right? You're shipping stuff from all over the world, all these different places to be able to then be able to produce a single product. So the answer, in my view, the only answer, in my view, today is that we're going to have to shift the power and the responsibility to each individual. And so the technology that we're working on in the not too distant future, you will be able to, when you go to a store, know precisely the amount of recycled content that is in each product, not because the company is telling you, but because a third party is telling you. And thirdly, you're going to know the probability of that product or that packaging that you are purchasing to be able to be recycled in your environment, in your local location. So these are this is the kind of information that if you put that power in the hands of the consumer, it's the only way. Sorry, I just muted. It's the only way that we can change the economics and the incentive structures that we need. We need to completely reduce dramatically the kind of extraction that Julia is talking about, and find new ways to be able to recuperate and keep these materials in the cycle for as long as possible without creating waste. It's a long road, but It's a big challenge. I think it's probably, as I wrote recently, I think the biggest challenge of our time.
Yeah, and it has to start somewhere. I mean, we can't just postpone this conversation. That's why we're having this conversation today. Hopefully more people will engage and will continue. So please, if you have questions, start putting the questions in the Q&A or the chat box here, and we will make sure we answer your questions as well. But I wanted to also comment that in systems thinking, there is this work by Donna Meadows. Unfortunately, she already passed, and she wrote that very famous report about the limits to growth. But what is amazing about the work she did is she showed us the best points of intervention in systems. So if you intervene in specific points, like she describes a 12 list of points of intervention, you will get more possibility to change a system. And one thing that she mentioned is information flow. So what you're saying, Ian, is if we provide missing information to people, so through technology, we will bring more information to people about what they're consuming. This can create awareness. This can change the purpose. And this can provide the reason for systemic change, right?
I think there's a tremendous disconnect between us, wherever you may be in the world, and your local community, right? You don't know what your neighbor is doing. You have no idea what, you may never even talk to your neighbors, or, I mean, I lived in New York 10 years. I know I didn't even know my neighbors at the time, but the actual, we are social creatures, and we're creatures of community. And if all of a sudden we can reverse this trend for us to being, more and more, let's say, private, but exposed, but not community oriented, I think there's a real opportunity for a change in consciousness, because once you see other people doing good things. We can use gamification or status structures, but once you see other people around you doing good things, we never see that, but if we were able to see that, then I believe that we could create a global community to do so. And what's fascinating to me is that, Web3 technology, like I mentioned earlier, provides the opportunity for people that are like-minded anywhere in the world to be able to participate in an ecosystem and help develop that community and that ecosystem. And in the case of wastes in particular, maybe not all Web3 products, but in the case of the circular economy, that can be a global community, but it can also be a local community. And so, for example, let's just say that there is no glass furnace anywhere, or let's just say there's no way to recycle plastic in my area. Then for that specific location, either we ban plastic, or we as a community decide that we're not going to consume this product, and we substitute it for something else. And substitution is the key, because that's where the fast, low-hanging fruit gains exist today. And if we just think about food waste, for example, and that could be another long subject, because food security is a huge problem, but food waste is a huge problem. 50% of everything that we consume on a weight basis is natural, and it should never go to a landfill and emit emissions, or it should never even go to an incinerator, which is a whole other subject. But we need the food waste to generate the compost after a composting process, to generate the compost that we need to regenerate our topsoil. So this is 50% of the problem, and it's nature in its purest form. And once that compost goes to the soil, it improves the output of photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the best technology to remove carbon from the atmosphere. So everything is connected. And maybe not everybody can buy an electric vehicle or a solar panel, but everybody can do the minimum in terms of recycling, and everybody could be rewarded for that, because an offset market that is basically a tokenized way of selling the services, the environmental services in the circular economy to companies that need to offset their negative externalities, all that value can be driven down to every single individual that participated in a very positive way. So this is going to open opportunities that we can't even imagine, in my view, in 5 years, for example. This is going to happen fast.
So show these connections, interconnections or interdependencies, right? Explain the damage that the current processes may be causing, give alternatives in terms of new technologies are replacing. And I have an example about that I'll show later. But what I am also hearing here is this: if you don't see the systems and if you don't make these connections, you just don't become conscious, and you are not taking the responsibility. So you're not doing anything. And there's a lot of talk in the internet. Like we also had a very good seminar discussion here with Renard Aron about the power of the citizen stakeholder. People with their cell phones, they can issue their opinions very fast and block people or put people in the spotlight very quickly. But this conversations sometimes are very shallow. So how can we create more conversations showing the damage that is happening and the solution and alternatives, right? And alternatives to how to do better.
It's exactly that. Think about the power that we can do, or the change that can come the day you offer the data and show to people the impact of their actions. Most people just walk this earth. They have no worries, and they have absolutely no idea the impact of a simple decision, which is at the point of sale. And we talk about it in our company all the time, but it's the matrix moment. You either do you want to take the red pill, or are you gonna still, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? Do you want to face reality, or you don't? And the minute you do, you never look at the world the same way again. You can't walk. I will walk 3 terminals in an airport until I can find a place that I can deposit my food waste, because I'm not going to throw it in a recycling bin or even in the landfill bin. I'm going to find a place. I'm going to find somewhere that I can put that food waste. So it's a slow shift. It's a slow thing, but with technology, this thing is going to go so fast now. That's my view.
And we need the different technologies and the different ways to reach the consumer or the citizen in different ways, because we're in different levels of understanding and maturity. I'm thinking here of this example in biomimicry, and I'd love to hear Julia's take on that. There is this case about white dye that is needed in many industrial and consumer applications. So the traditional approach uses titanium dioxide that's mined in countries like Sierra Leone, Quebec, South Africa. And this causes a lot of environmental degradation. It causes harsh label conditions, and the waste is terrible. But biomimicry, which is the science that learns from nature and, like Ian said, looks to replace this more damaging elements by something that's not so damaging. There's a company, let me get the name here, Swiss-based company, Impossible Materials, looked to the brilliantly white Syphocil, I don't know how to pronounce this beetle name, Syphocellus beetle for inspiration for an alternative. And they found that its body has structures that diffuse light waves, making it completely white. So this company's design team created a similar structure out of cellulose waste that produces a white pigment. And according to this company, they create a brighter white than titanium dioxide. And of course, it can be cheaper and scalable. So solutions like that, right? Replacing, we don't need to be only extracting. We can create structure that produces the outcome that we want. And I don't know if you have something to say about titanium dioxide, Julia, in your research? Or
no, I mean, I have more to say in relation to what has been discussed. Like when we talk about food and food waste, and I can share images of the horrible dams that are from phosphate, right? It is how many people buy in their local markets. What is the percentage of the food you consume that comes in a package, right? Like oftentimes, and that comes also with a challenge that is money, right? We have to think that whenever we're talking about climate change or environmental structures, the people that suffer the most are not people that are able to make some sort of those choices, right? They're most of the times not able to go to pay more for organic food or for a local market that charges, more because it's local. They need that kind of production level that allows food to be cheaper, especially with the inflation that is going out in the US. Right. So most of the people that are suffering are like most of the victims of climate change are people of color, racialized bodies, and so which leads to the environmental racism. Right. So basically, we often forget that there are people in this dynamic that are actually, and it's not that they're not in a position of making the decision. That's why I am reluctant to believe that all the solutions are in the hand of the people, because there are people that are really not in the position to make a decision right now, right? Because there is money involved, there's more cost, like leaving. And we can't forget that we came to the situation where we are now because we needed production levels to be extremely high for costs and prices to be lower. So how are we going to shift that understanding? Also, on like, which is a common debate on climate change issues, is like so between countries in development and countries that have already developed, like that now are putting the cap on the emissions, right? So how, and countries under development always say, but we haven't developed yet, we still need the emissions. You've already emitted a lot. So how is it different for us? And those things are almost like conundrum, right? We can't address them. And I think that is important, as we've been talking about systematic approaches, like how are we going to address climate change in terms of democracy, right? Like how are we going to address the fact that our decision making needs to come so much faster than we are able to make in a democracy, right? And and as I said, I think that sometimes it's too much. And even the electric cars, for instance, that Ian mentioned, I'm highly against this boom of electric cars because we are not addressing the fact that batteries are like, you either can hold like a true worldwide expansion of electric cars, or you have to choose between the Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia or not, because both things are not possible to coexist right now with this technology, right? And the same thing with how we are going to address those issues, right? I think that South Africa has an amazing program, for instance, for solar panels. And how is that not something that happens in other places? So I think that there are so many questions that we need to address when we talk about local development, local communities. Who are those communities? And how are we in a position, especially because all of us that are talking here have light skin, right? Like, so how, and a higher level of education, but what happens when the people that are being affected don't have those privileges? So, and I'm bringing that as an artist, but also because I experience things from the ground, right? And I feel that I'm extremely privileged to talk about those items or those issues, but those people are also important that they come to the table when it comes to technology that is going to impact directly their own lives, right? So there's important that the stakeholders that we are talking and we are bringing to the conversation are the people that are really suffering with the real externalities from those companies.
This is a beautiful segue for the first question we got here from José Menezes, because again, according to Dana Meadows, one way of intervening in the system is through rules and regulations. So people who cannot make the choices by themselves will look upon for government regulation to help. So a question here for either one who wants to answer. What are some countries, in your opinion, that are benchmarkings in terms of government regulations for recycling? Ian, want to chip in on that?
Sure. there are a couple really interesting projects. I mean, I think that most of the community, whether it's the United States or even in Latin America, they're always looking to Europe as the example. The problem is that Europe, due to its lack of space and for other reasons, most of those countries that do reach like recycling levels that are considered good, they're both basically mostly burning waste, and they're hiding the waste burning as an alternative because it's generating energy. So it's under the guise of waste to energy, they're burning. So whenever you look at Europe, typically those higher rates of recycling are basically they include incineration as a recycling solution. So that's the problem. What I really like is Estonia, for example. I mean, they have completely scaled their recycling programs through decentralization and through door-to-door pickup of food waste. So once you sort your food waste and your green waste, your organic waste, and you send them to composting facilities, you clean up the recyclables, and the recyclables are can be much more recycled. So you can look at Estonia, you can look at many communities that are in Italy, for example. So there's a whole list in the Zero Waste Europe website that shows a bunch of great examples of great zero waste projects. South Korea is also a really interesting project. They require that everybody pay for the amount of waste that they generate. So that's an incentive structure it's called pay as you throw, typically. So as you throw away waste, as you generate waste, you have to pay for the recycling of that waste based on the waste type. So they have chips, RFID chips on bins that get recognized at the moment of pickup. There's also an extended producer responsibility law. So corporations that are producing negative externalities and waste, they need to basically be buying offsets for the waste that they generate, which helps to fund the logistics, which is the biggest problem in circular economy today, is logistics. So those are examples that I would look to that are really good. And I think that, that's just the start. I mean, once you start to embed incentive structures that are going to enable you to benefit, because the problem with pay as you throw is that you look at trash and you say it's a cost. And it's a cost, and I have no idea if it's going to ever be recycled. But once you have waste tracking, and once you can have a benefit, even if it's small, but even if it offsets a portion of the cost, then you're going to be part of a system. And once you're part of a system, you're going to say, okay, I can be a part of this. If I'm willing to pay for water, if I'm willing to pay for my energy, if I'm willing to pay for my cell phone, it's a utility. You're simply going to be a part of a system, and this system for waste is a little bit different. So those are the recommendations that I would make.
And that goes beautifully with the second question here. Clara Souza said, everyone seems concerned about plastic waste. Today, you talk about tech waste and food waste. So how to close all these loops? I think the Estonia example already addresses that a little bit, but I don't know if you want to add something else for Clara, besides what you said for José Menezes.
So plastic waste is a huge problem, right? And plastic, aside from the fact that it's a petroleum-based product, and beside the fact that it is very light and cheap and so abundant, it often ends up in the. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the plastic vortex. In every major ocean in the world, you have these currents that circulate, and at the very center of these currents are these massive islands of plastic. Okay, great. So plastic is a huge problem. The answer is substitution. We have to get away from using plastic in the first place, and so it's not actually that hard to imagine, because if you use, in the States, for example, in the US, if you're using compostable bags typically compost in composting heaps at the same rate as food waste and green waste. So anything that's single use should just be banned, that plastic be used. I mean, there's no reason to. There are solutions out there already today that need buyers, that need to scale, and those are typically the compostable products, not to be confused with biodegradable, because there are no standards for biodegradable products, and biodegradable products are typically products that come from plastics, but that they just are worse quality and they become microplastics more quickly than the regular plastic that you buy. So avoid biodegradable and look for compostable, especially for single use. And then everything else needs to be substituted. So we can use glass for a lot of products. A glass bottle can be recycled 40 times, can be reused 40 times before it's recycled. So there are substitutes. We just got to solve other problems. Once we solve that problem, then we got to solve other problems like the energy situation that Julia brought up.
It's all interconnected. We can't look at in a simplistic, fragmented, or it's important to look in the detail, but you can't disconnect all of those issues from each other. And Julia has a beautiful way to show the connection. I don't know if you want to mention this now, Julia, about the food waste and the agriculture and the chemicals and all that. You also have a beautiful piece that you showed me another day. I don't know if you have that, set that aside for our audience today.
Yes, hang on. Let me just, this is a niobium dam. It's another, but I wanted to show two things. One is, I think I've mentioned this too, right? Which are the,
no, this one, yes.
Yes. So this image, which is a phosphate waste dam. And it's basically what happens is that mostly all the fertilizing that we need for our agriculture, especially the large scale agriculture, needs fertilizers. And so basically the fertilizers create a dam that is high in nitrate. So basically, and it's what it causes this color, this green color. And the same thing that it starts with the own mining of the phosphate, and then it develops itself. It translates into the food because we are using fertilizers that are high producers of nitrate. So basically, whenever we pee or we poop, we also are throwing that in our watersheds through our water wastes. So basically, the whole thing starts in the beginning, but it also doesn't end with us. And that's one of the reasons why you see so much of a green water whenever we are talking about rivers that are polluted with household water waste. And basically that's one thing that I believe it's truly significant. And another thing that I think you asked me to show, and I believe it's so significant, is, and I'm not sure if this is the best, but it's this, right? This photograph that I showed to you. So basically, if you look in the top part of this image, sorry, not this, and the top right of the image, you see this geological formation that is completely different from the rest of the image.
The mountains with the tip like that, right?
Yes, exactly. This is me photographing in Ouro Preto, which is Brazil's one of Brazil's most important historical sites where mining started 320 years ago. And basically, especially artisanal gold mining. So basically, if you look at those very that very sharp edged mountains, and which you can see here better. So basically what happened is that it is completely different from the geological formations of the area. And it was really hard for me to find this information. And basically those are waste mountains created by enslaved man during the 19th centuries, the gold rush in Brazil, the Brazilian gold rush. So basically those waste mountains, the waste that they created by removing the land to dig gold, created those mountains, right? So it's basically, and what I think is very significant in terms of this conversation is how nature healed itself, right? A lot of us wouldn't know that. And I think it's important that some of those mountains are kept, right, as a symbol of nature resisting, right? As a symbol of the violence that how this process of climate change in general was created. Right.
So, and what you're saying is that these mountains exist and they're covered with vegetation and they look like other mountains, but they have this particular geology, right?
Yes, they are covered. And that brings me to another image that we can see here. This is Brumadinho Dam, when they broke, like a few months later, you already had green growing on that, you know. And same thing here. This is, I'm not sure if people are familiar with it. This is Mariana Dam. And basically, this is how nature recovered 5 years later. You know, like nature is already growing on it. And I'm trying to find, this is how it was before.
Wow. This is the same place?
The same place.
Wow. So we have a question from Maria here. Amazing conversation. My question for Julia: can we mitigate the impact of mining?
Oh, I am.
Can you mitigate the environmental impact of mining? Sorry, I lost the sentence in front of me here. So
I'm sorry. Like after all this years, I'm sorry, I have a 10-month-old baby, so we'll hear a little bit of babbling in the back. But basically, I'm not sure if I'm ever able, because of where I stand, right? My own standpoint of how things are done now, I really truly don't believe it can be done in an ethical way, because it is an industry that has been doing these things kind of in the same way you did like 400, 500 years ago, right? It hasn't been updated. You have better technology, you have better machinery, but it's basically just dragging and digging, you know. So I think it's the same thing a lot with agriculture, right? As Ian was saying, like, how are we addressing the fact that we need extensive land to cope with all the soil that is needed for the production of food right now, right? Whenever you upscale, a lot of the industrial food needs soy, right? So how are we doing that? So I really believe we need a radical transformation in terms of technology really needs to step in. Governments, I know a lot of people are reluctant to believe in that, but I still think that because there's so people that are vulnerable involved in this, like the government has to fulfill its role of protecting people. So basically, I am very reluctant to just believe that there is a way of doing it in a correct manner, because it is very, very, very harmful and very destructive and very abusive in its root to the environment.
Yeah, so raising the knowledge, creating more flows of information about what's really happening, studying more biomimicry and other sciences that might bring alternatives to the way we are extracting from nature, and creating other processes that might be more regenerative, changing our consumer habits or tracking our consumer habits, like Ian was saying, so that we are more aware and take responsibility for what we choose to have in terms of advances in technology and whatnot. So a lot to be done here. Good ideas. Let's keep going. I have one more question here from Sibeli that I would love to ask both of you. So let me read here. So hello, first of all, thank you for such an amazing conversation. My question is about technology. You, Ian, talked about the positive impact of technology, such as blockchain. Since we are humans and every E comes with a yang, as Julia's beautiful work shows, what would you think would be the dark side of this process that is arriving fast, as you said? The dark side of
we are in the dark side. We are the dark side. We are in the dark side today. There can't be the extraction industries that exist today have to stop. We are so in the dark right now, and very few people realize it. There are risks. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation. Blockchain can be very green. Everybody understands blockchain as what the Bitcoin mining world exists, and that's just not going to be that's just one case of blockchain. You can have ecosystems built on the amount of energy that a single cell phone consumes today. The problem we have is that there are brilliant technologies out there. There are brilliant solutions that have been created, but they haven't scaled. And they don't scale because they're the incentive structures in our global economy that are set up in a way that they're not built for change. They're built for resistance. Who's going to tell a major mining company that they're going to die in 10 years, or they should die in 10 years, you know? And you have the SEC coming down with new regulation for disclosure of carbon. Great. Soon enough, you're going to have new regulation that's going to come down for disclosure on waste. Great. All these things and putting the power in the hands of people, I think is going to bring incredible change. So from where I sit today and I look at technology every single day, we are in the dark space today. And we only have upside from here. I mean, there's practically no downside from where we are right now. I mean, the problems are so big. The only downside we have is that the problem is scaling. The problem itself is scaling so quickly that we need to scale the solution faster than the problem. That's the essence of the urgency with which, like, I think we need to treat art every single day. We have to go after it.
And ask the tough questions. I was having a conversation with a board member of a mining company, a very famous one. And she, a lady sitting there, which is also a good progress, was telling me how she was the very first one to raise questions that were never raised before. So how can we make more of that movement, raising the questions in the board discussions? So for the governance of the ESG, right? In the R&D discussions, like you all said. So Sibeli continues the conversation here with another question for Julia. So for Julia, one of the strong messages in your art is to point at our inner conflicts expressed by the beauty of your pictures and the horrible reality of their context. It seems to be an invitation for integration and a search for middle path solutions, or ones that contemplates the systemic and complexity of our reality. I want to ask how you envision integration in the solutions for the problems you brought up.
So basically, again, I'm very, very skeptical. Because I've been doing this long enough to see very, very little progress. So right now I bring up the problems and I just have to admit that I don't have solutions. I have little things that I believe that are important to be done, right? I think that one thing that Ian mentioned before about blockchain and how we can trace all those residues, I think it's extremely important, because even when you're talking about the carbon market, the carbon offset market, like there is one thing that is related to the mining chain, which is the breeding of eucalyptus, which is essential for steel making in Brazil. How actually the pig iron is made. So you first extract that iron ore and then you melt it, and this melting process you can do it two ways. You either use charcoal or use coal. So in the US, you historically have used coal. In Brazil, you use charcoal, which is basically the coal made of plants, right, in eucalyptus. So basically in Brazil, a lot of the carbon offset the way they have been selling is that they've been putting eucalyptus farms, which are ginormous, and they are only created for the purpose of using that charcoal later in the future. But meanwhile, while the charcoal, where the eucalyptus is growing, they're selling carbon credits over it. That forest is super damaging to the soil. It dries the soil and all its nutrients to a very high speed, and also at the same time, you are oftentimes depleting. So you first deplete the natural forest that was there, then you use that for the charcoal, and then you plant the eucalyptus, which grows faster, has a better result. So basically, it's a very non-efficient way of doing carbon credits, right? And how do you know, right? How does the person that is trading needs to buy some carbon credit knows about that information? So we really need some sort of, liability and also reliability, I'd say, right? So we need to know that, okay, this is a good carbon credit, this is not a good carbon credit. So I think that that's one thing, but I really believe that a very, very deep systematic change needs to happen in terms of, like, for instance, we were talking about the SEC, like how they applied, they're going after Vale right now, because Vale lied about the stability of their dams for their investors, the US investors. That's super important, because the government wasn't able to protect people, like the international court wasn't able to protect the people. But yes, like for some reason, the only thing that has happened so far those two crimes that happened, it is actually the fact that the stock exchange went after them and said like, hey, you lied about this. Right. So those are important things. I truly believe that those are important things. I just don't believe that it will address the whole issue because it's extremely complex. And I don't think that me as a one single artist, humble here, am able to create a solution. We really need a network of people thinking together.
We don't have to have, we wish we had all the solutions, otherwise we wouldn't have those problems. But showing the beautiful work you're doing, Julia, to more people to create this awareness is already a huge step. So I really applaud what you're doing, and I hope that more people will look for your work to learn more about what's going on. And this marries beautifully with the question from Sweta Gupta here. She's saying that if we have technological limitations that allows waste, then why limit the main product, as pollution is often a side product of industry? So she's questioning here, a more appropriate consensus can help bring awareness for growth. So she would like to hear your thoughts. So more awareness of the limitations of certain processes or certain products. We need to know more and tell people more that it's not okay to just say, oh, I offset, oh, I do ESG. But how you do that, right? So please, if Ian or Julia, if you want to share your thoughts.
Julia.
Oh no, I haven't even I have to think a little bit about this, but I think that we are again against a very, very difficult situation. I know Ian is really hopeful and he's working towards that. I'm still on the, as I said, in the skeptical side of it. But I think that I agree with you. It's hard to find a solution in terms of growth because, as I brought earlier, countries under development are still asking for more pollution limits and growth because they need to catch up. I'm not sure if that catching up will ever happen, even if they emit the most ginormous amount of waste and pollution they want, because the structure of the market itself will not allow that, right? The capitalist market was mainly structured around the fact that some countries are the providers of the raw material, and the other ones will produce the final products at an enormous gain. I have a film, if you're ever interested, I can share it. It's called The Longest Train in the World, based on a poem by Carlos Drummond de Andrade, and it talks about that, right? Like that iron ore that was extracted and that is taking those trains is worth like $1.5 million. But the cars that are produced and use 66% of a car is iron ore, and those cars were sold for $26 million. So that difference, no matter how much we extract from Brazil or from in any country in Africa or any other country in Latin America, will never really be able to address that. So that's why I think that we really need to rethink the structure of the market itself.
Yeah, bringing awareness. Sibeli made a comment here. You're doing an excellent work in bringing awareness in such a delicate way. So congratulations. Thank you, Sibeli, for your comment here. Oh, 5 minutes. We're coming close to the end, and I would love to leave our audience with a positive message to take home, because we're not here to answer and find the solutions for all these problems. We're here to bring more awareness and to be hopeful that technology can help, either by giving more transparency, by explaining some of the limitations of the processes we have right now. So I'll turn back to both of you. Who wants to go first? Message to our audience.
Well, I can say, don't try to solve everything at once. Don't be overwhelmed by the huge challenge. I think that we need to take it into baby steps. We don't have time, so we have to act fast. But I think that never before, the smartest people, and I'm not including myself in this, by the way, are looking at the climate problem and are looking at the waste problem and are looking to solutions. And I think that we haven't even begun to look at Web3 technology and its applications. So far, Web3, people just think of blockchain and they think of Bitcoin, or they think of some crypto coin that they bought. That's nothing. That's not what the world is building now. And I think that Web3 is going to be this great black hole. It's going to funnel all the cash in the world into this space. And it's going to be revolutionary in ways we can't even imagine. Hopefully, it'll be a very positive, to answer a prior question. It'll be very positive for us all. And I think that a lot can be done. Maybe perfection can't be reached in this lifetime, but we have reasons to fight. And I think that once you put the power of cleaning up the world in the hands of the people and you bring knowledge to them, then the market forces are going to be very powerful and very difficult for large polluters to hide. And so we are in the dark, and I think the light's coming soon.
Yeah, like we used to say in GE Aviation, the Selma unit in Petropolis, the slogan or the motivation phrase was "Never give up." Never give up. Let's keep looking for asking better questions and looking for the answers and not give up. So thank you so much, Ian. That's an amazing message. Julia, your message to the audience, please.
I want to pick up on Sweta. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it not properly, your name. Humans are part of and product of nature and environment over a process of 400 billion years. And I think that I wanted to pick up on that and say that an average time that it takes for a mountain to be created, it's like usually like an iron mountain, it's 2.5 billion years. So basically it's taking us less than 100 to completely destroy and deplete the resources. So basically I invite everyone to think, and using a quote of a book based on a book from a researcher called Marcia Bjornerud, a geologist. And it's like timefulness. We need to start thinking about how little our existence is in relation to the planetary time, and especially at mountain time, right? So basically, if a human being lives an average of 80 years, the blink of an eye, that moment that this blink that I've just did, I've destroyed all the mountains. So that's how fast it goes in relation to the amount of time it takes to build a mountain. So everything I need to live for the 80 years or 82 years, it will go away in the blink of an eye. So I think that it's really important for us to stop thinking in a very selfish way, in a way that we are here and our time is based on our own existence. And we need to start thinking as our ancestors, and mainly as our indigenous people in Brazil always taught us, right? Which is like, I'm not one human being. I am the human being that is related to everyone that came before and everyone is coming after me. So I'm just a dot in a very, 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 very long line of existence.
Beautiful, Julia. Oh, and as for Briyah, my message to the audience is apply systems thinking to business, to life. Let's look for these interconnections. Let's look at innovation as a process, not a product only. Systems thinking is process thinking. So if you don't know how, come to Briyah and we will enlighten you. And to close, I'd love to leave you with words from Humberto Maturana, who is a systems thinker that I admire a lot from Chile. He used to challenge us to think of innovation, not only about what we want to create in terms of the new, but let's focus on what it is we want to conserve. If we have clarity, if we know what matters and what we want to conserve, we focus on that and we can let all the rest change. Beautiful. Thank you, guys. This is awesome to have you. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, the amazing audience who stayed with us asking the questions. Jose, Sibeli, Sweta, Flavia, Maria, all of them. Stay tuned for the next episode of the series Nature Connects Art and Science. Thank you so much for watching us. Soon we'll have the recording and you can watch again and still keep in touch with us. And let's keep asking questions. Thank you again, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.